It is 7 o'clock and welcome to the boat shop. Welcome to the speaker series. This is our second event in the series. We had one about a month ago. There will be one more at the end of March. We don't have details just yet, but stay tuned. We'll let you know about that one. And so there are a few things that you should know for those of you who are watching here in person with us. Thanks for coming on a slightly snowy evening. If you need a washroom, there's one in the corner. There's also one downstairs. I don't think there's anything else that you really need to know about the building. But we do also have a bunch of people who are watching us online. So we have camera and YouTube Live and all sorts of things happening. So for everybody who's watching live, welcome. We're glad to have you all here with us as well. And we can imagine that most of the people here in the room, you're probably from Lunenburg or somewhere not too far away. For those of you who are watching online, we are going to ask where you're from. We'd love to know where you're watching from. So if you can write into the chat on the YouTube video live that you're watching, tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to say hello to you, and there will be some audience participation opportunities a little bit later for folks online and for folks in the room too. So I think that is sort of the housekeeping stuff. This series of speaker presentations is presented by Bluenose II as well as by the Fisheries Museum of the Atlantic. So the room that we are in right now is a part of the museum. And so we're glad to be working together to bring some winter programming to Lunenburg. And so we are delighted to have Paul Baskett here with us this evening from Old Town Boatworks. Paul and his team are frequent collaborators and contributors to Bluenose II. They have done a lot of work with us over the years, and we specifically this evening, excuse me, are going to talk about the new bowsprit for Bluenose II. That Old Town Boatworks has been working on building really since last fall. And so Paul is going to have all sorts of information for us about that, talking about some of the construction methods and materials and all that kind of good stuff. If you're a carpentry nerd, you're in the right place. And at the end, we'll have the chance to ask questions. So we'll take questions from folks in the room. We'll also take some questions from folks online. And then at some point we will, once we come to the end of questions, we'll cut off the live stream. And then for everybody who's here with us in person, the team at Old Town Boatworks are going to do a little open house for us down at their shop. So you can come and see the bowsprit, you know, touch it, put your hands on it, and see how large and impressive a spar this actually is. So we'll do that after the end of the presentation. But I think that is everything I need to tell you for now, so let's get to it. Paul, come on up.
Okay. Thanks, Maggie. Thanks, Colin. Thanks for coming. It's a crappy night. This is easy. I think almost everybody. I think we could all go down to the other end of the harbor and take the Bluenose out for a spin, because everybody's here. So feel comfortable. I'm glad you're here. This is great. I'm going to start with I guess it's a truth. The rest of it might be a bit vague and could be sneaky. But this early summer, I think we were fixing part of the bowsprit. The boat was at its summer dock, so I don't know when it was. Maybe it was early May. There was a lot of tourists around. It had been raining. Devin and I were up on scaffolding, and we were fixing a small little patch in the bowsprit. And a tourist, who obviously wasn't from here, who was maybe into woodworking, came up to me and he said, "You have the best job in the country." I saw no evidence of that statement that day, but I understand, I think, where he was coming from. And we spend a lot of time on the ship in the off season when it's under plastic wrap. But I know the crew know this better than we do, that it's really easy to underestimate how much this ship means to a lot of people. And it is a privilege to work on the boat. It doesn't always feel like it some days, but it has an amazing power over people, this ship. And I know you guys see it a lot, and different people have worked with it. She is the rock star of the harbor, and we're really lucky to get to work on her. And it's been a big learning experience, and it feels like we're just beginning to learn how complicated the boat actually is. So there she is. That's a bowsprit right there. If anyone's, I think you guys know more about it than I do, the bowsprit. There is an agenda, apparently. My wife put this together. Thank you to her. I don't know how to do this. There's some really good questions there, which we'll get to in a minute. I want to take a second away from the bowsprit and talk about the working waterfront of Lunenburg, which is really important to the community. So we're one of many companies that work in and around the waterfront in Lunenburg. So there's anywhere between 12 and 7 people working at Old Town Boatworks at any given time. Everyone who works there has a full-time job. They get paid a living wage, and we'll train them. So these type of industries that are in the harbor are really important for the future of this town if we're going to have a working waterfront. A working waterfront means real jobs, 12 months a year, well paid. That's the goal of Old Town Boatworks, and it's the goal of most of the companies that work here on the waterfront. If we don't protect the working waterfront in Lunenburg, it has to be nurtured. We'll lose it. None of these small companies can do the work to keep the infrastructure there. It has to be a choice by the town if you want to have these businesses here, because we can't do it on our own. So we're really grateful for the opportunity to rent these spaces and improve them and work there. But it's not solely down to us, it's down to the community. I think it would be difficult for Bluenose II to run its operations in a different harbor. We're there 12 months a year working on other boats too. So it's important to remember that if we want Lunenburg to stay unique as it is, I think one of the biggest things that makes Lunenburg unique compared to a lot of other harbor towns in Southwest Nova is that we do have a legit working waterfront. So Old Town Boatworks, typically we work on projects, boats that are owned by people outside of the country is our normal customer. So at the moment we have a couple of big projects going on for an English client and an American client. And there's probably about 13 other Lunenburg County companies that work on those projects alongside us. So Old Town Boatworks is a unique kind of company that it's sort of a hub for all these other companies that work there. So sail makers, machinists, riggers, diesel mechanics, marine electricians. I'm probably forgetting a few others, but all those people work on projects that come into our dock to get work done. So, and we wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for the commitment to the working waterfront that Lunenburg has. So that's who we are. And we're just down there behind Foodland. So we're hidden, out of sight, out of mind. This is a team of guys. This project, it is mostly guys. It's unusual for us. Devin is kind of our first mate. He's away on a sabbatical in England at the moment. And a couple of apprentices have been working on the spar. One of them is Evan, who's here tonight, who also we're lucky is the bosun of Bluenose, current bosun. So, you know, he's kind of the blame hound if anything doesn't make any sense. It's his fault because he's the bosun. What is a bowsprit? Good question. Evan, what's a bowsprit?
It is the spar at the bow of the ship that supports the head rig, supports the head stays coming from the foremast or the mainmast if it's a single-masted ship.
Right.
Holds a lot of load, ton of force. If there's head soles that run on those stays, that load is also going to be transferred through it, and it essentially also extends just the sail area of the ship to be not just be reduced to the deck length of the boat.
Right. Okay. But please feel free to ask any questions at any time. I haven't really prepared anything. So this is, I don't know what year this photo will be, but this is the first boat. So as you'll see, if you want to come and see the bowsprit next door, it doesn't look much different. It's the same thing. So the bowsprit, as Evan has pointed out, is a key structural point in the ship. There are a bunch of spars on the ship, and I would imagine if any one of them were to break, if you had to pick one that you didn't want to break, this would be a big one. There's a big chain of events that would be bad that would happen if this thing was to break. If we go back to this, we see these giant wires that connect to the main mast, to the top mast, and then wires connect to the main mast, the main topmast. If this thing goes, all that stuff comes crashing down to the deck, hundreds of feet down on top of people. It's really bad, is my understanding from talking to the captain, that's bad. So the spar that's in the ship now, or the one that we're replacing, is 30 years old. Is that right? There's nothing wrong with the spar that's in the ship now, or was in the ship this fall. There was a couple of little niggles. We fixed them. But given the importance of that spar, the captain and the team that run the ship are like, it's time to replace the spar. So this is, what we're doing is preventative building or preventative maintenance. And it's a kingpin in this whole forest of wood up there. So that's why we're replacing it. It wasn't built in 2012 when the new hull was built. It's 30 years old. Some of the other spars are older on the ship, or they're all getting around that age. Okay, yeah. So my first week of boat building school, I went to boat building school in Maine. The instructor explained to us that the vehicle, man-made vehicle that experiences the most vibration on the planet is a fighter jet that goes over the speed of sound. The second place thing that suffers the most vibration is a sailboat. So as we're sitting here tonight, the Bluenose II is vibrating. The wind is rushing through the rigging and it's shaking. It's pulling against the wharf and it's rutsching and twisting. This never stops. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, the Bluenose II is trying to tear itself to pieces. That's kind of what boats do. The old saying is that as soon as the boat goes in the water, it spends the rest of its life trying to get to the bottom. And she's doing it right now. So Bluenose II's superpower is that it's made out of wood. And wood has an amazing thing in that it has a memory. So this is right by Mike's convenience store, you know, by the Baptist church on the way into town. These are a bunch of birch trees. You'll see this all over the South Shore at the moment. They're all bent over and stuck in the snow drifts. They got stuck there probably about 3 snowstorms ago. And in the spring, most of these trees will be fine. So wood has this amazing ability to do horrible, horrible things to it, and it'll spring back to where it wants to be. So that's why the ship's built out of wood, or that's why they use wood, because we haven't found a material that's better to build things out of. And wood talks to you, and it tells you when it's unhappy, and it gives you warning signs when it's going to fail. So for spars, it's an amazing material to make a spar out of. So if you have an aluminum mast in your boat, it will bend to a certain point, and when it breaks, it'll fold over like a cigarette, and that's a game over. Carbon fiber mast, it'll bend to a certain point, and it explodes and fails catastrophically and instantly. A piece of wood will start to groan, creak, splinter, crack, and it'll give you warnings that something's about to happen. And sometimes it'll partially break and come back, and you can get away with things. So it's an amazing material. So it makes our life a lot easier because you can get away with a lot of things. Certain areas you have to be pretty careful and know what you're doing, but the resiliency of the material itself is a huge advantage. So that's why the spars are made out of wood, which is a common question that we get. Also, this spar is a laminated spar. So we also get asked a lot, why don't you just cut down a tree and make it round? And the answer is, when a tree shrinks and dries, the outer areas of the tree have to crack around the center of the circle in order to shrink and release that moisture. And what happens in those cracks is fresh water collects, rot starts happening, and it's a constant game of filling the cracks with Vaseline or whatever it is, squid brains, to keep fresh water from getting in and rotting it. So this spar is laminated, it's glued together, and it's made out of multiple sections of clear wood, so there's no center to a tree that the wood can twist around. So it's a much more stable thing, but it's made out of that resilient material that will bend, get tortured, and go back to where it's supposed to be. And that's, so this is a timeline of what we did. We didn't downrig the mast, luckily. The crew did that. We made a template. It was very easy for us because we had the old spar, and the captain said, make one of those. Easy. Basically, you get a measuring tape, and we go, okay, we're going to make one of those. And then we're like, geez, we need a lot of wood. It's really big. And we go on from there.
What kind of wood, Paul? What kind of wood?
It's made from Douglas fir. So it's from the west coast of Canada. So
The new one.
the new one and the old one. Yep. All the spars on the ship are Douglas fir.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's any history buffs what they used to make the spars out of in the olden times.
There was Oregon white pine at one point of the original Bluenose.
Oregon, so it's still from the west
Yeah,
coast.
still.
Yeah, okay. So we don't have trees around here that make good masts, is the bottom line. I guess when we did make trees out of masts around here, the boats were probably a lot smaller, and so it maybe didn't matter. I don't know, though. This is the crew. removing the old bowsprit. See, that's a big Bluenose boom truck to give you some sense of the scale of it. Probably weighs maybe 2,000 pounds, something like that. And it's 35 feet long. I don't know, any schooner owners here? Previous, or how long was the bowsprit on? Yeah, so it also always amazes me about the Bluenose is you go on the Bluenose, everything looks completely normal. And the size, nothing looks weird. It's a testament to Rui's design. It's beautiful, everything's proportional. You take it out of context, everything on the Bluenose is ridiculously big. It's like Gulliver's Travels. We bring in like a cleat for something and we can't get it through the door of the shop. It's insane how big the ship is. I think you guys did this pretty quickly. A couple of days, was it, to downrig the spar? Yeah, and how many hours with a sledgehammer? A lot, yeah. So you can see these are whisker shrouds, correct, on the side, top ones? Whisker stays, sorry. And what are these guys called? Bob stays. So, and they have turnbuckles and then it's lashed to tension. So the whole spar is pulled into the ship and it's under tension, basically. So all of the work that this spar does is basically compression, right? So when the rig moves one way, it's getting squeezed in. And another thing we'll talk about shortly is what the spar is squeezing against, because that's actually the strongest point of the ship and is an important partner to the bowsprit, which is also being replaced. It's already been replaced. But you can see the guys, I think, are you turning turnbuckles there, by the looks of it?
Probably.
Yeah, so it takes 3 people and a bunch of persuaders and crowbars to loosen stuff. It's not a small undertaking. Luckily, we didn't have to do it, so it's great. So, Samson post is a giant stick that goes through the deck in the bow of the ship where the boat is really, really strong, and the post sticks up through the deck. And I think in the old days on the Grand Banks, if they anchored there and things were getting dirty, they probably took the anchor chain and put a couple loops around the strongest thing they could find, and that would be it. And it's called the Samson post for a reason, because it's the strongest point on the ship. The old one had some signs that it wasn't so strong and there was problems. And we knew that that was going on, but we waited until we were replacing the spar because it's easier, it's already out. It's actually a fairly quick procedure to replace that post. It's just a piece of wood. It just happens to be 12 by 12 inches and 14 feet long and weighs 800 pounds or whatever. So it's massive, but it is simply a post. And it goes through some carlins and deck beams. I don't know if you can see here, but that's the keelson of the ship. And it just has a pocket and a notch, and there's a tenon cut on the bottom of this, and it drops right in. Those are the main sheets from my sailboat, and we used it to drop it down. And we just used Egyptian technology to move it around. So with 3 people and some ropes, we were able to tip it up, drop it down in the hole. And the guys did a good job from making a template from the old one, and it slid right in. So it's bedded in that tenon with a bunch of tar, roofing tar, to fill any little gaps so no moisture can get in there. And then Evan had to replace some of the deck. And after the deck was replaced, then it's corked with oakum and cotton and then sealed with a polysulfide sealant after that. So the new Samson post is in. It's already got the tenon cut, or the mortise cut to receive the new bowsprit, which is sitting in the shop. So the Samson post, the strongest post, was the weakest link in this scenario because it has all that compression and all that load from the rig pulling backwards on that post. So you have to follow the chain of things, and this guy had to be replaced. So the bowsprit's fine, the post was not. So we have a new post and a new bowsprit. Where did we start? We needed a lot of wood. We got it from British Columbia. You can see the size of the pieces are probably like 3 by 6. There's no real reason for that size other than that's the wood we could get in 20-foot lengths. That was really clear wood. So what we then did is just make a giant square piece of wood out of multiple pieces. In order to make the pieces long enough, we used what's called a scarf joint. And I think they're 10-to-1 scarves.
I wasn't here for this.
Okay, you weren't there for that. I think 10-to-1 is what we went for. So over that length, Douglas fir is a wood that likes, the glue we use is called epoxy. It's a olefin-based resin. You've probably heard of it. Douglas fir loves epoxy, glues like a champ. unbelievable. So that scarf there, if you take that piece of wood is essentially as strong as if it didn't have the joint in it, once you bevel that scarf over a certain length. So because of the wood we had, a lot of the sections only had one scarf in it. The rest of it was just wood. So we made a series of cake layers, as the guys called them, where they edge glued a bunch of pieces together to make one big flat board, glued another one on top, another one on top after that. Pretty rudimentary, simple stuff, except the scale of the thing is so big, you have to figure out ways of moving this stuff around. Everything we do on the Bluenose, the boat building side of it, is fairly straightforward. It's a series of steps, as the boat builders in the room here know. On Bluenose, the challenge is the logistics. So when we've changed planks on the ship, changing a plank is a fairly straightforward operation, except on Bluenose, they're 30 feet long, 3 inches thick, and they're made of oak. So, you need a bunch of friends just to see if the thing's gonna fit properly or not. Logistics are the big thing. We've learned a lot with rafts and chainsaws and pulleys, how to move things around, and the guys are getting pretty slick at it. But we're learning as we do it. Here's the wedding cake. So we got 4 slices of the cake, and the 5th one is about to be flopped on. This one, you can see it's floating magically in outer space. It's because it's set on some different pieces of wood ready just to flop over. So it takes probably 35, 40 minutes to spread all the glue, and then you just do one big heave-ho and slap the piece on, and then spend a lot of time with a lot of clamps squeezing it all together. And so we're getting pretty close to the end of it. And so here's the giant square. It's a beautiful picture, sorry about that. It's a bit out of focus. This is done on a Friday because sometimes we drink beer after work on Friday, and we had a lot of friends there, and it took about 9 of us to turn the square piece of wood on its side. That's how heavy it was. This is the biggest it is in the whole process. So to make a round spar, you basically start with a giant square thing, and you make sure it's 4-sided. After that, you carefully make sure it's 8-sided. And after that, you make it 16-sided, which is octagon, hexadecagon, I'm told is what the 16-sided one is. And then you make it round with sandpaper, which we did later on. The spar is not round, as if you want to go there and see it, which makes it complicated. It's square in the middle, round at either end-ish, with some flat parts. So the only part that's actually round is the bit that sticks out of the boat. The rest of it is a weird changing shape. But again, we had the old one sitting not beside us, but at the other end of town. So we took a series of offsets every foot. How wide is it? Is it a circle? Is it a whatever? Wrote it down on a piece of wood, bring it back into the shop, and lay it out every foot what the shape of the thing is. So it's actually a fairly simple series of steps, but again, it's just the logistics of it is the challenging part. So this is, you can see there's a taper. The spar is actually flat along the deck of the ship, and then it tapers up from the stem to its tip. And that tapered part is round. So that's the tip of the spar there. And Devin is cutting the taper, which was done with a chainsaw and then a big chisel and a positive attitude, and we just smashed through it. And here you can see it later in the process with the caterpillars and the notches for the ironwork in the end. So yeah, these are the steps. I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of pictures of the step because everything is a bit boring to us, and I'm really bad at taking pictures. But you can see Devin is making it what's he making it? An octagon there. And you can see he's drawing out how small it is at the tip. He's just working his way along with the chainsaw. So he draws out lines along the top to make it 8-sided, and then clean out the chunks with a big slick and headphones. So you can see there's some here, I don't know if this is clear or not, but you get a sense of, there's the flat part where it sits on the stem of the ship, and the whole bottom of it's flat there, and the rest of it is round. And this is the tenon at the end of the spar that sits in the Samson post. So it jams into the post, and that's how it's, and this is the final details around the end of it. Caterpillars. What, is that the right name for them? Is that what you guys call them? Okay. Everyone on the ship has a lot of weird names for things on it. Big ships have weird names for everything. we're a bunch of shipwrights and we should know the names better, but whenever we work on the ship, we like to make up new names for the parts of the ship to see if the captain flinches when we mention it, or to see if he can tell what we're talking about. But these are called caterpillars because they look a bit like caterpillars. And yeah, maybe they don't in that situation, but when you're making them, they look like caterpillars. But I think the lines that you tie the foresails down basically are attached to this.
Yeah, for the like the headsail stops.
Right.
For the sail ties.
And maybe it's something to hold on to when you crawl out there, or
It helps sometimes.
sometimes, yeah. So we didn't make many changes to the new spar, except this is one place we did change. These used to be made out of oak, and they were fastened in with big lag bolts. And what we did is we made these out of big pieces of mahogany, and we routed pockets in the spar, and we glued it in with wooden trunnels made out of hard mahogany. So there's no metal in there, and the hope is that you don't get the sweating of the metal and trapping moisture inside the thing. We'd replaced a few caterpillars over the years, and we discussed it with the captain, and he agreed with us that we could try this method. And the hope is that this will last longer, and we won't have to dig into the spar itself. Yeah, questions? Oh, this is a little plug. This is a boat we built a couple years ago. Also made out of wood with a different technique. This is a cold molded boat. Has a 20 horsepower on it. Goes about 20 knots and weighs about 600 or 700 pounds, the boat. So there are a couple different ways to build boats out of wood. And this is just, there was a photo shoot because that boat was in Wooden Boat magazine, and the Bluenose happened to be coming in the channel, so we cut in front of her and took a few photos. So,
whatever.
Yeah. So that's how we built the spar. Yes, Michelle.
Finding the wood
Yes.
for it. Did you have to go out there? Like, how do
No.
you know that you're going to get what you want and what you need?
Yep, they have basically what the type of wood we're looking for is quarter sawn wood, and you can specify how many growth rings per inch in the wood that you would like, ideally. And with any timber merchant, you're going to get 20% of the wood isn't going to be that great, so you kind of factor that into how you do it. And we got this wood through Goodfellows, which is the biggest timber merchant in Canada, I think, and they're bringing wood from the West Coast all the time. And they basically have a file all the time of what wood they have in different yards. And I think some of this wood was already, no, it was being milled when we ordered it. So they had set aside some logs, and in their computer system, they see what they have. And
How long does that take? Like, so you started the process early,
Yeah.
but, and you would put a whole
Yeah.
call out
Yeah.
kind of thing?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think we were talking about building the spar probably 6 or 7 months before we wielded a chisel in anger. Yeah. Anything on this ship, planking stock, for instance, we have a couple of timber merchants in the States because we use white oak to replace some of the Angelique planks. And that timber merchant will call us periodically when they have a tree that would suit for the Bluenose. So we already have feelers out amongst our people on the ground in different places to find wood that's big enough for the ship. When you're laminating a spar, you have a little more flexibility because you can work with it. But things like planking, where it's actually just a hunk of wood, it's really hard to find materials that are big enough to do this. It's actually insane to build a ship, in my opinion, traditionally this way, with the amount of wood, more importantly, the amount of wood you have to throw away with this technique of boat building. So plank on frame boat building, where you just put a plank on the side of the ship and spike it on there. You have to take a massive piece of wood, cut a weird shaped piece of wood out of that, throw a bunch of wood away, throw some more when you cut and fit it, and then plunk it in there. And that one plank, you probably get 2 planks out of a tree, you know? So it's crazy.
When you had to replace 1 or 2 planks that were
Yep.
Angelique,
Yep.
why did you replace those with white oak? Could you not get Angelique? Is that hard to get? Or?
It'd be harder for us to get, and also it's really horrible wood to work with.
Dull's tools?
You look at it and your tools get dull. It's horrible. Yeah, and it weighs a ton. So, and white oak is a really good wood. It's rot resistant, really strong. Very different from red oak, which traditionally grows around here. But white oak only grows in New England, a little bit in Quebec. So white oak is pretty prized and a really good material. And a lot of the cap and some of the planking, original planking on the ship is white oak as well. think Angelique went to a certain point and then they switched to white oak. But if we had our choice between the two woods, a good piece of white oak over Angelique, we'd be happier with that. Yeah, really hard.
So just to finish off my
Yeah.
inquiring about, so how did they ship that? Does it come in a transport truck?
Yep,
Or-
big truck. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think many years ago there was I remember when they shaped the foremast, and I don't know if it came on a train, did it? Came on a rail car from the West Coast. Yeah. So everything on the ship is really, really big. Yeah. Again, it's those logistics. Yeah. Yeah, I know you know. Yeah. I mean, those sails are ridiculous. I think I've sailed a lot and I've done silly things on sailboats. This boat terrifies me. Like the size of the mainsail and the scale of things is really, really intimidating. I don't envy the captain or the crew one bit sometimes. Yeah.
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
Since we're doing that first. So I keep looking at the foremast of the Bluenose, and I'm always surprised that it doesn't have checks in it.
Right.
Considering its size and how old it is.
Yeah.
Is there, like, what sort of treatment plan would you do to, like, get that result? We're not going to, but let's say we were to purchase a tree to make a mast out of, what does the treatment plan look like to make it look like that? Because I've asked and I haven't gotten
that's a really difficult question. I don't know. The great thing about wood is it's great. The bad thing is it's an organic material and has a mind of its own, and it's completely, sometimes very unpredictable. So I'd be surprised if there aren't any checks in it. The short answer would
there are small ones, but
right.
I mean, like, so like for the size of the mast, like I've seen, like there's some ships, there's some other vessels, tall ships in North America, and you can like put your fingers in checks, but the deck, like on the deck here, it's clean almost all the way up.
Well, I would say one of the things about the ship, and not to toot your guys' horn, but there's a lot of regular maintenance on the ship that goes on. You guys cover the rig in Vaseline and slosh it with stuff all the time. It gets varnished all the time. So that wood probably hasn't dried out the same way a ship's spar that sits there and just dries out. So the best place for wood in a ship is underneath salt water. It's great. So there's no oxygen. The wood is full of moisture. It's really, really happy. The hard-working parts of this ship are above the waterline. And it's dealing with fresh water and dealing with the sun and the constant cycling of the temperature changing. And so if you live in Lunenburg, you know that all the doors shut in February and none of them will shut in June when you open the windows and the fog rolls in. It's unbelievable. So imagine what's going on that boat. The scale of the movement of the wood is crazy. And it's a huge, dynamic, flexible thing. So to answer your question, I think what you're doing is probably where I would start, is I would keep that wood, keep doping it with moisture retention stuff all the time. And the goopier, the better. And it seems to be working.
My other question was about the regulations. Is there, because Transport Canada, you know, to my knowledge, is a bit, doesn't have like a very specific, way of like a plan for how you should build a wooden vessel of this size. So how do you know how many growth rings you need in your planks or in other parts of the vessel? Like I know the Americans have a bit more guidelines. So are you following their rules or?
So rules are interesting. Short answer is there aren't really any rules around what we do. The long answer is the American Navy has a lot of really good books and documents and charts about how to store wood, how far from sapwood you need to be in order for the wood to be reliably rot-free, how you should store it, and the expansion you should expect per species of wood and its use. So we have all of those reference things and we look at them and we keep them in mind when we're selecting timber for certain parts. But there is also, with something like Bluenose, as you can see around, there was a lot of these built here, and so there's some sort of standard practices. Now, the old boats that were built right here on the beach were built to last 10 years, and they paid for themselves in 2 trips to the banks. So they were treated the same way we treat a pickup truck, like an F-150. You drive it until the wheels fall off and you get another one. So it wasn't really, these boats were not built to last 60 years or whatever the mandate is for Bluenose. So we have an old design that is a disposable fish hauling machine, really beautiful one, but they were banged together in a couple of months on the beach. And we're trying to maintain the ship at a really high level for 2 generations. So we're learning every year as we go into the ship and try and figure out how to prevent big ticket items from happening. And to come back to your spar, I think if you have a team of people that go over every inch of the ship every year, that's a really good place to start. So we, which is what the crew does, my understanding is if people join the Bluenose and they think they're going to go sailing and see some places, and then they show up and they get given a scraper, right, and maybe some knee pads, and they spend 6 to 8 weeks scraping every inch of the massive ship. And that's the time of year where the bosun or the mates or the captain say, can you come down and look at this? And so every year there's a detailed survey of the ship. And we have a big chart in the office that has all the areas that we're like, this is a concern, this we should keep an eye on, and this is, don't worry about it, it's okay. And wood is always, the ship is always talking to you. You know this. It's always showing you stuff, and wood puts its hand up and goes, this, you might want to check this out. And so if you have experienced people on the ship like you do, they listen and they pay attention. And we're just learning as we go along, how do you actually do preventative maintenance and maintain a ship that really in its design was not designed to do that. It was a disposable fish carrying thing. And if it lasted 8 or 9 years, great, then sell it to a Newfoundlander and build another one, because they were cheap. So they're not cheap anymore, they're really expensive. Because wood is expensive and people are expensive. But people were cheap and wood was cheap back then. So, yeah.
You mentioned you built the new Samson post.
Yes.
What material was used for that?
The Samson post was built out of sipo, or utili, which is an African mahogany, basically. Yeah.
And the original, or the one that you replaced it with?
The one we replaced was made out of white oak.
Okay.
Now, white oak is a great material, but the sapwood of white oak is as good as spruce. So what happened with that big piece of white oak is a section of it was near the perimeter of the tree, which comes back to the issue of there aren't trees big enough this way. And that sapwood with some moisture trapped in there, rot spread through and weakened what is supposed to be the strongest point on the ship. So we spend a lot of time going through the ship, and where we find problems on big timbers is invariably where the sapwood of the tree was. And the proximity to the sapwood even is an issue. So if you follow the US Coast Guard minesweeper building regulations with white oak, you need to be 6 inches from the sapwood on either side. So if you take the sapwood like this, and sapwood here on a plank this big and go 6 inches from the sapwood, that's how much wood you're allowed to use if you're going to build a US Navy minesweeper. So the realities are you're going to have some sapwood in your boat, or you're going to be close to what was sapwood of the tree. And every problem we found on the ship is usually related to that. And we're developing a bit of an eye for it, and we can tell by the pattern of the rot in certain places. But I don't know how many pieces of wood are in this thing, but it's a lot. There's thousands of them. And the deck has 80 holes in it that are 8 by 8 where every stanchion is. Every one of those holes has 4 sides that has to be corked by a human being, sometimes on Friday at 3 p.m. And there's water raining on it, fog sitting on it all summer. There's snow melting on it all fall. It's brutal. And so you have to keep chasing it every year, with the idea that this ship keeps sailing and stays in good condition. But yeah, it's a lot.
I'm going to check in and see if we have any questions online. Are there any there, Colin? Why don't we do another question in the room first, and then we'll see if anybody who's watching online does have questions. You can write them in the chat, and we'll get to your questions. And for anybody who is in the room, if you have a question, let me know, and I'll come. I've got a little microphone in my hand. That's what I'm carrying around, so that the folks who are watching at home can hear us.
Nothing online just yet.
Nothing online just yet. Okay.
Yeah. The captain was telling me when he's in the what do you call it, the chart room way back aft, he can tell if someone moves around on the spreaders of the foremast. to give you an idea of how much that huge ship moves around. Like, it's a really dynamic kind of beast, which was surprising to me. Because you stand on it, it feels like a city sidewalk, but he's like, the whole thing's constantly twisting and moving, and it's really interesting, you know? There's a lot going on. Do we
Any
get to
other
go and look at it
questions?
now?
Yeah, I think we do.
Cool.
So we'll just wrap it up for the folks who are watching online. Thanks for joining us. Hope you learned some interesting things. Paul's had his contact information here. Old Town Boatworks is doing a bunch of other interesting things. They've got a spirit yacht in the shop right
Yep.
now. A few other interesting projects coming up this spring.
Yeah.
And so there are lots of ways to get in touch with Paul and his team here. So we've got phone number, email, website as well. So anybody who has any questions or
Yeah. Ask anyone but
all
us.
sorts of things. There you go. You can always get in touch. So thank you, folks who are watching online, folks who are watching with us here in the room this evening. If you would like to, you are welcome to come on down to Old Town Boatworks.
Yeah.
And come and see this spar. It's quite incredible, and they are on board. Everything seems so perfectly in proportion, and then you take a 35-foot spar and you put it into a workshop, and it looks really, really big. So it is definitely worth a look.
Yeah.
Hope you'll come join us. But we'll wrap up the live stream and then
Cool.
head on over.
Thanks.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks, everybody.